Think about the last time you saw a pickup truck from the 1980s that wasn't a Ford F-Series, a Chevy C/K, or a Dodge Ram. Chances are you can't. And yet the decade produced dozens of extraordinary trucks that have almost completely vanished from memory. Some were bizarre, some were ahead of their time, some were quietly excellent, and the world just moved on. Today we're counting down 30 forgotten pickup trucks from the 1980s that nobody remembers. Hit like and subscribe if you love digging up forgotten automotive history. Let's go. Number 30. The Dodge Macho Power Wagon. Most people know the Dodge Power Wagon name vaguely. Far fewer know about the Macho Power Wagon, a special edition produced from 1979 through roughly 1981. The name alone was extraordinary. Macho. Dodge actually named a truck Macho. The package included a lifted suspension, oversized off-road tires, wide wheel well flares, and aggressively loud graphics across the hood and sides in bold striping. Based on the W150 four-wheel drive chassis, with V8 engines producing around 150 to 175 horsepower. The addition didn't last long before Dodge moved on to different directions entirely. Today, finding one in original condition is a serious treasure hunt. Most people have no idea it ever existed. Number 29, the Plymouth Scamp. It's 1982. Plymouth decides to build a pickup truck, not a traditional one. A front-wheel drive pickup based on the same platform as the Dodge Omni. They called it the Scamp. And yes, it was exactly as strange as it sounds. The Scamp shared virtually everything with its sibling, the Dodge Rampage. Four-cylinder engine, around 64 horsepower. Front-wheel drive pickups were essentially unheard of in America at the time, and most buyers felt that was entirely reasonable. The bed was small. Towing capacity was modest at best. Plymouth sold fewer than 10,000 Scamps across its entire production run, ending in 1984. Most people didn't know Plymouth ever built a truck. That's how thoroughly forgotten this one is. Number 28. The Ford Courier. Most people know the Ford Ranger. Fewer remember what came before it. The Ford Courier was a compact pickup Ford sold in the United States from the early 1970s through 1982. Here's what most people don't know. Ford didn't build it. Mazda did. The entire truck was designed and manufactured in Japan, then shipped to America wearing Ford badges. An early example of badge engineering in the American truck market. The Courier sold well during the fuel crisis years because it was economical and cheap to buy. By 1982, Ford had developed the Ranger to replace it, and the Courier disappeared from dealer lots. No farewell edition, no announcement, just gone. Most Ford truck enthusiasts today have completely forgotten it existed. Number 27. The Isuzu Space Cab. Isuzu doesn't get nearly enough credit for what they brought to the American truck market in the 1980s. While some people vaguely remember the basic P-Up, almost nobody recalls the Space Cab variant. Introduced around 1983, it was genuinely innovative. The extended cab design offered a small rear seating area, quite forward-thinking for a compact truck at the time. The interior felt distinctly Japanese, very different from the domestic trucks most American buyers were used to. Available with both gasoline and diesel engines, another unusual option in the compact segment, Isuzu also supplied the Space Cab to General Motors, who sold a version under the Chevrolet Eluve nameplate. The Space Cab quietly faded when Isuzu shifted focus toward SUVs in the late 80s. Number 26. The Chevrolet LUV stood for Light Utility Vehicle. The Chevy LUV was essentially a rebadged Isuzu Faster sold through Chevrolet dealerships from the early 1970s through 1982. Small, economical, and a little unusual looking compared to the full-size American trucks of the era. General Motors needed a compact truck, but had no interest in developing one internally, so they partnered with Isuzu and put Chevy badges on an existing Japanese product. The LUV sold reasonably well during the fuel crisis years. By 1982, GM had developed the S10 and no longer needed the LUV, so they dropped it, just like that. Today, it's largely a footnote in Chevrolet history. Number 25. The GMC Caballero. Imagine crossing a pickup truck with a station wagon and trying to sell it to the American public. That was essentially the Caballero. GMC built this car-based utility vehicle from 1978 through 1987, living entirely in the shadow of its Chevrolet sibling, the El Camino. Same A-body platform as the Malibu and various Pontiac models, offering a car-like ride, reasonable cargo capacity, and available V8 engines. The identity problem was persistent. Was it a car? Was it a truck? Nobody quite knew. By 1987, General Motors pulled the plug on both the Caballero and the El Camino simultaneously, as combined sales had declined past the point of justification. Today, the Caballero is almost always forgotten entirely. Number 24. The Dodge D-Series. Before the Dodge Ram, there was the D-Series, and most people don't realize these are different trucks. Dodge had been building the D-Series since the late 1950s, and it continued into the earliest years of the 80s. The transition to the Ram name didn't happen overnight. Through 1980 and 1981, Dodge was still selling trucks designated D100, D150, D250, and D300. They resembled the incoming Ram generation, but carried the older designation. The D-Series earned genuine loyalty over more than 2 decades. When the Ram rebranding took hold in the early 80s, the D-Series classification simply ceased to exist. Most buyers today assume Dodge Ram trucks always carried that name. Number 23. The Datsun 720. In the early 1980s, you could walk into a dealership and buy either a Datsun pickup or a Nissan pickup, and they were the same vehicle. The 720 was sold under the Datsun name through the early 80s. Then, Nissan began absorbing the Datsun brand, and by 1983 the same truck wore Nissan badges at American dealerships. A capable compact with outstanding reliability and better rust resistance than most domestic competitors. Available in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive configurations, with the King Cab extended cab option popular among outdoor enthusiasts. When the 720 was phased out in favor of the hardbody in 1986, many buyers barely noticed the transition. The 720 simply dissolved into automotive history without much acknowledgement. Number 22. The Mazda B2. Thousand Mazda had been selling compact pickups in the United States for years by the early 1980s, but the B2000 is largely forgotten today. A straightforward, honest truck. Small, light, fuel-efficient, and dependable, without being particularly exciting. Used a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, updated to the B200 in 1986. What made it interesting was its relationship with Ford. After Ford dropped the Courier in 1982, they briefly sold rebadged Mazda B-Series trucks before the Ranger fully took over. So in the early 80s, the same basic truck was available from both a Mazda and a Ford dealership simultaneously. The B2000 was never flashy and never tried to be, but it worked, and the market simply moved on. Number 21. The Mitsubishi Mighty Max. Mitsubishi had a surprisingly significant presence in the American truck market during the 1980s, even though most buyers didn't fully realize it. The Mighty Max was their compact pickup, sold under the Mitsubishi name from 1983 through the end of the decade. Sharp, angular Japanese styling that looked genuinely modern for the era. Available in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive layouts, with both naturally aspirated and turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. The turbocharged version produced around 110 horsepower, genuinely competitive for a compact truck in that period. Here's the key detail. Mitsubishi was also supplying the same basic truck to Dodge, who sold it as the Ram 50. American buyers were driving vehicles with Mitsubishi engineering underneath without necessarily knowing it. Number 20. The Dodge Power Ram. 50 Dodge needed a compact truck in the early 1980s, but had no interest in developing one from scratch. The solution was simple. They went to Mitsubishi. The result was the Power Ram 50, essentially a Mitsubishi Mighty Max wearing Dodge styling and sold through Chrysler dealerships. The name was carefully constructed to sound tough. Power Ram 50. It had nothing mechanically in common with the full-size Dodge Ram, but buyers didn't necessarily know that. It sold reasonably well, and some buyers preferred it to domestic compact alternatives because the Mitsubishi engineering was genuinely solid. Available in base, custom, and Royal Sport trims, with the two-tone Royal Sport version being surprisingly attractive for the segment. By the late 80s, Dodge phased it out. Almost nobody remembers the Power Ram 50 by name today. Number 19. The Isuzu Pup. Despite the unusual punctuation in its name, the Isuzu Pup was actually an excellent truck. Sold in the United States from the late 1970s through 1987, it earned a strong reputation for extraordinary reliability. The diesel version developed a dedicated following among buyers who prioritized fuel economy above almost everything else. Isuzu also offered a four-wheel drive version that performed surprisingly well off-road given its compact dimensions. Mechanically simple, easy to maintain, and almost comically durable. Some examples are still running today with minimal restoration. The main challenge was visibility. General Motors was simultaneously selling essentially the same truck through Chevrolet dealers as the LUV and later the S10. A battle the Pup quietly and consistently lost. Number 18. The International Harvester S-Series. By the early 1980s, International Harvester was in serious financial trouble, and their truck lineup reflected the strain. The S-Series trucks represented the final chapter of a company that had once been a genuine force in the American commercial vehicle market. International Harvester had been building farm equipment and trucks since the early 1900s. By 1980, management failures, a crippling labor strike, and fierce competition had pushed the company toward collapse. They sold their agricultural division to Tenneco in 1984 and exited consumer vehicles entirely. The S-Series trucks from those final years are almost completely forgotten today, which is unfortunate because they were genuinely capable, heavy-duty machines that competed well against anything Ford or Chevrolet was building. Number 17. The GMC Sierra Grande. In the 1980s, GMC was working hard to position itself as the premium alternative to Chevrolet, despite sharing virtually all of the same underlying vehicles. The Sierra Grande was the top trim level of GMC's full-size pickup lineup, designed to attract buyers wanting a slightly more refined work truck experience. Upgraded interior materials, additional sound insulation, wood grain trim, and more carefully finished exterior details. The persistent problem was that the corresponding Chevrolet Silverado was essentially the same truck and sold in dramatically greater numbers. Fleet buyers mostly ignored the Sierra Grande. Individual buyers chose the Chevy out of familiarity. As GMC restructured their trim hierarchy throughout the decade, the Sierra Grande designation quietly faded away entirely. Today it barely registers even among dedicated General Motors truck enthusiasts. Number 16. The Chevrolet C10 Fleet Side. The Chevrolet C10 name is familiar in a general sense, but the specific configurations from the early 1980s occupy a surprisingly invisible space in automotive memory. The C10 was the half-ton two-wheel drive variant, of the classic C/K body style introduced in 1967 and carried forward with updates into the 80s. Major revisions arrived in 1981 and a comprehensive refresh came in 1987. The C10 that a typical working American drove in 1982 or 1983 exists in a specific middle period of that long production run. Not the classic 70s version, not the updated late 80s version, just a solid, capable, completely unglamorous truck doing its job quietly in the background of American life, remembered by almost nobody. Number 15. The Dodge Lil Red Express truck. This one has a somewhat stronger following than most entries on this list, but it still doesn't get the recognition it deserves. The Lil Red Express was a genuine performance truck Dodge produced from 1978 through 1980. It used a 360 cubic inch V8 with twin vertical exhaust stacks rising dramatically behind the cab. In 1978, it was the fastest production vehicle in America from 0 to 100 miles per hour, beating contemporary Corvettes and Ferraris. It accomplished this because truck emissions regulations were less strict than passenger car regulations, allowing more aggressive engine tuning. That's an extraordinary automotive footnote. When emissions rules were revised around 1980, the original formula became unviable, and the Lil Red Express quietly disappeared. Most people today have no idea it ever existed. Number 14. The Ford F-100. Here's one that genuinely surprises even dedicated Ford truck enthusiasts. The F-100 existed as a distinct model through the early 1980s. Ford had been building it since 1953 as the lightest-duty F-Series variant, positioned below the F-150 as the most basic work truck Ford offered. By the early 80s, it had become functionally redundant. The F-150 covered essentially the same market while being more capable and only marginally more expensive. Ford quietly discontinued the F-100 after the 1983 model year. No announcement, no farewell edition. It just disappeared from the order books. Most buyers at the time didn't even notice. Today, even dedicated Ford collectors sometimes don't realize the F-100 continued through the early 80s. Number 13. The Jeep Comanche. Jeep making a pickup truck seems obvious enough, but the Comanche had a genuinely difficult time connecting with buyers when it launched in 1986. Built on the same XJ platform as the Cherokee, it was a unibody pickup at a time when most buyers expected body-on-frame construction for any vehicle designed to haul and tow. The Comanche was compact, nimble, and capable off-road thanks to genuine Jeep credentials. Both two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive configurations were available. The problem was market timing. The compact pickup segment was intensely competitive by the mid-80s, with the Ranger, S10, and several Japanese alternatives all fighting for the same buyers. The Comanche never broke through. Production ended in 1992. Today it has a small but devoted Jeep following. Number 12. The Chevrolet El Camino. The El Camino is one of those vehicles everyone has vaguely heard of but almost nobody has actually driven. Chevrolet built this car-based utility vehicle on and off from 1959 through 1987, and the final 80s chapter is particularly forgotten. The last generation rode on the G-body platform, sharing its structure with the Malibu and Monte Carlo. Looked like a muscle car from the front, a compact truck from behind, V6 and V8 options both available. The SS version had genuine performance credentials that almost never get discussed. By the mid-80s, America had largely moved on from the car truck concept. The El Camino felt like a remnant of a different era. Chevrolet built the last one in 1987. It simply faded away. Number 11. The GMC S15. Chevrolet gets most of the credit for the compact truck revolution of the early 1980s, but GMC was right there with the S15, a truck almost nobody remembers today. When Chevrolet launched the S10 in 1982, GMC simultaneously introduced the S15, mechanically identical, same platform, same engines, same structure, just with GMC badges at GMC dealerships. That was the persistent problem. Buyers shopping for compact trucks generally went to Chevrolet dealers. GMC was perceived as the commercial and fleet brand, not the consumer choice, so the S15 consistently struggled against its twin. It later became the Sonoma, but during its initial years as the S15, it existed almost entirely in the S10's shadow. Number 10. The first-generation Chevrolet S10. The S10 isn't forgotten, you might think. Everyone knows the S10. Well, sort of. The late 90s version has a solid following, but the very first generation, produced from 1982 through roughly 1986, is genuinely overlooked. When Chevrolet introduced the first-generation S10, it marked a significant moment. An American manufacturer finally building its own compact truck, rather than importing Japanese hardware and adding American badges. The early S10 came with a 2.5-liter Iron Duke four-cylinder that was notoriously rough but completely honest about what it was and what it cost. Buyers needing basic, inexpensive domestic transportation appreciated that. Those seeking refinement did not. The first-generation S10 is essentially invisible in automotive culture today. Number 9. The Toyota SR5 Extra Cab. Toyota's trucks of the 1980s are generally remembered, but usually as a vague concept rather than in any specific detail. The SR5 Extra Cab designation represents one of the most important configurations Toyota offered during the decade, and it's surprisingly absent from popular memory. The SR5 was Toyota's sport-oriented trim level, featuring upgraded wheels, improved seating, and a more finished cabin. The extra cab added a useful storage area behind the front seats. Together, the SR5 Extra Cab created a compact truck that was genuinely pleasant to spend time in, which was not consistently the case with compact trucks in that era. The combination of reliability, practicality, and personality made it enormously popular with younger buyers throughout the decade. Number 8. The Jeep CJ8 Scrambler. When Jeep built a pickup variant of the CJ in 1981, the result was the CJ8 Scrambler. Longer wheelbase than the standard CJ7, a proper cargo bed, and full off-road capability as standard. Four-wheel drive because it was a Jeep. Engine options included a 2.5-liter four-cylinder and a 4.2-liter inline-six, with the 6 strongly preferred for serious work. The problem was that the Scrambler occupied an awkward middle ground between a dedicated off-road vehicle and a functional work truck, without fully satisfying either audience. Production ended in 1985 when Jeep redirected focus toward the Cherokee. Only around 27,000 were ever built across the entire production run. Today, they're sought-after collector vehicles, but during their time, they were largely overlooked. Number 7. The first-generation Ford Ranger. The Ford Ranger is one of the most successful trucks in American history, which makes it remarkable that the very first generation, produced from 1983 through roughly 1992, is so comprehensively forgotten. Ford launched the Ranger to replace the imported Courier and compete against the S10 and the wave of Japanese compact trucks arriving in American showrooms. Early Rangers offered several four-cylinder engine options, none particularly inspiring, along with a 2.8-liter V6 as a modest step forward. The styling was clean, the interior was basic in the extreme. What made the first-generation Ranger significant wasn't individual quality, but what it represented. Ford finally building an American compact truck. Number 6. The Volkswagen Rabbit Pickup. Nobody expects Volkswagen to build a pickup truck, and yet from 1980 through 1983, they sold exactly that in the United States. Known as the Caddy in most markets, The Rabbit pickup used the front-wheel drive Golf platform translated into a small, efficient, distinctly European cargo vehicle, a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine, and a functional cargo bed for its size. The diesel version was particularly interesting, returning fuel economy figures exceptional for any vehicle of that era, let alone a truck. Assembled at Volkswagen's American plant in Westmoreland, Pennsylvania, making it genuinely domestic in production, even while thoroughly European in concept. It never sold in large numbers. The American truck buyer was not receptive to a front-wheel drive German pickup. Production ended in 1983. Number 5. The Toyota Hilux. The Hilux is legendary in most of the world. In America, it was quietly one of the best trucks available throughout the entire 1980s and rarely received the credit it deserved. Toyota began selling the Hilux in the United States in the late 1960s, and by the 80s it had developed a remarkable reputation for near-indestructible durability. The British television program Top Gear would later famously demonstrate just how difficult it was to destroy one. But in the 1980s, American buyers often passed it over in favor of domestic brands, and the Hilux quietly exited the American market when it was replaced by the Tacoma nameplate in 1995. The Hilux name never officially returned to the United States, an extraordinary utility vehicle still sold across most of the world, considered one of the greatest trucks ever built, yet a footnote in American memory. Number 4. The Nissan and Datsun transition trucks. The story of Nissan's trucks in the 1980s is the story of a corporate identity crisis playing out across American dealership lots in real time. When the decade began, Nissan was still selling trucks under the Datsun name. The 720 was the current model. Nissan began transitioning the brand in the early 80s, and for a period trucks wearing both Datsun and Nissan badging coexisted at American dealerships, mechanically identical in every respect. The 720 was phased out in 1986 and replaced by the model American buyers called the hardbody due to its distinctive angular styling, improved build quality, stronger engines, a wider range of configurations, a significant step forward. And yet the entire transition period with its overlapping identities and rebadged trucks existing side by side is now almost completely forgotten. Number 3. The Dodge W150 Power Wagon. The Power Wagon name has a long history in the Dodge truck world, but the specific W150 from the early 1980s is almost invisible in popular memory. The W designator meant four-wheel drive in Dodge's nomenclature. While the D Series covered the two-wheel drive market, the W Series ran parallel to it as Dodge's dedicated four-wheel drive lineup. The W150 was a legitimate, serious off-road and work truck. Conventional four-wheel drive systems with manual locking hubs, available V8 engines, and genuine body-on-frame construction. Farmers, ranchers, and rural workers who needed dependable four-wheel drive swore by them. Dodge's marketing attention during the early 80s was largely directed at their car lineup, and the trucks received little promotional support. By the mid-80s, the W Series designation was absorbed into the broader Ram identity. Another quietly forgotten chapter. Number 2. The Dodge Rampage. Front-wheel drive pickup trucks are not something the American market has ever fully embraced, and the Dodge Rampage, built from 1982 through 1984, was one of the most ambitious attempts to change that. Based on the front-wheel drive Dodge Omni platform, making it about as far from a traditional American pickup as you could get. Transversely mounted four-cylinder engine, no four-wheel drive option, and a cargo bed small by any reasonable measure. Chrysler marketed it as a fuel-efficient alternative for buyers needing occasional truck capability but wanting car-like driving manners. The ride quality was notably better than most compact trucks of the era. The fuel economy was genuinely impressive. American buyers remained deeply skeptical of front-wheel drive trucks. Chrysler built approximately 32,000 Rampages across 3 model years. Most have long since disappeared. Number 1. The Subaru Brat stood for Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter. Even the name was remarkable. Subaru launched the Brat in the United States in 1978, and it remained on sale here through 1987, making it a genuine presence across most of the 1980s. The concept was brilliantly unusual. Take the all-wheel drive platform from the Subaru Leon wagon, add a compact cargo bed, then bolt 2 rear-facing jump seats directly into the open bed. Jump seats. In the cargo bed, out in the weather. The reason was entirely regulatory. Those seats allowed the Brat to be classified as a passenger vehicle rather than a truck, avoiding the significant import tariff on trucks in effect at the time. Creative regulatory navigation, and it worked beautifully. Genuine all-wheel drive capability, a comfortable car-based ride, and a price far lower than most other four-wheel drive options on the market. Ahead of its time in almost every measurable way. Today it commands a devoted cult following and surprisingly strong resale values, perhaps the most uniquely bizarre and brilliant automotive story the 1980s ever produced. And there you have it. 30 pickup trucks from the 1980s that time has almost completely forgotten. Some were brilliantly bizarre, some were quietly excellent, some were simply victims of bad timing or indifferent marketing. Did any of these bring back memories, or do any of them genuinely surprise you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this trip through forgotten automotive history, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.